Welcome to Inside the Itinerary. Today we are going to be talking about Japan, and we have a special guest. We have Falashide Yellow from Boundless Travel,
Mhm.
and welcome, Falashide.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's jump right in. Let's talk about Japan. What are the common mistakes that people make when they plan travel to Japan?
Sure. I think one of the biggest mistakes that they make is trying to do too much. Unfortunately, on the American side, we are not blessed with endless amounts of time. And quite often, people want to go to Japan. It looks really compact on the map. And they're like, I want to do all of these things. And realistically, you can't. So the biggest thing with Japan is trying to do too much, too fast, and not really going a little bit deeper. So I think that's one. Two, also thinking about, you know what, I need to do Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, etc., sticking to the bigger cities and not some of the smaller side cities that can add some layers and some context to Japan. So I think those are the biggest challenges.
Let's say that someone's never been to Japan before. This is
Mhm,
going to be their first time.
mhm.
How many days and what kind of a trip would you recommend?
In a perfect world, I would say if you can spare at least 10 days and that's outside of travel, that would be perfect. So you can take a more leisurely time when you're going through Japan as opposed to being super hectic. I think a lot of people will say, oh, I'll just go to Tokyo and I'll do side trips from Tokyo and go here or there, not really taking into account that's eating up a lot of time in doing transit and transportation.
So for those 10 days, what regions would you recommend staying in?
So it really depends. If you wanted to say, you know what, I'm going to go to, I want to do Tokyo, you can do Kanazawa, you can do Kyoto, you can do Nara from Tokyo. You can also do the Mount Fuji region, but make it a little bit shorter, make it slower. So I think we have this rush type of thing where I want to hit all of the things that I've seen on social media, as opposed to, you know what, I'm going to take a deep breath, and you can spend 4 days in Tokyo itself. Spend more time in Kyoto, and that also gives you time so you can avoid some of the crowds. So instead of going out when everyone is in the bamboo forest, you can take a different route and kind of make it a slower time because you're going to be doing a lot of walking as well in Japan. I don't think people also realize how much walking that they do.
So is there one splurge that regardless of someone's budget, you really recommend that when they make and do in Japan?
I think it's get something done that's custom. If you're a cook, have a custom knife made for you. Example, if you have a lower budget, you can get custom chopsticks. There are lots of different ways from a food perspective. You can get dashi mixes made for yourself. So it's those little small things that you don't think about that make great souvenirs. The skincare is amazing. I may or may not have come back with all of these different skincare products when I'm there, but come up, do things, custom shoes. There's a high level of quality when you're looking for customization and personalized goods. And, it's one of those things I still pull out one of the knives that I had made, that I helped, and I still use it. And that's my special splurge that I think about whenever I use it. But you can do it from bags, from garment wear, etc. But even as simple as chopsticks, getting those made is a constant reminder when you come home.
Great.
Or take cooking lessons. Everyone loves ramen, and ramen goes far beyond the, 69 cents, 75-cent package of ramen that you purchase. So really understanding from a cooking perspective and a culinary perspective as well, then you get to show off for your friends.
So talk to me about the difference between staying in the big cities versus all those small little towns and villages.
It's slower. There are it's you're going to hear less English spoken, so you have to be okay and comfortable with being uncomfortable. The food, it becomes a much simpler. I always say if you can stay in a local inn, a ryokan, that experience is great. I think there are other things people don't realize. I always ask my clients, do you have tattoos? And they're always like, well, oh, that's an odd question. I was like, there's a method to the madness. So especially if you're going into one of the bathings, you can't really have tattoos. Tattoos are not allowed in most instances, and you are going to be naked. And I know that's one of those things Americans like, wait, I have to be naked in a mixed crowd. When you're taking the waters, you're going to be naked. And tattoos are generally not allowed. So you should have ones we can arrange for private ones. There are some locations where they're very tattoo friendly. But that also guides if that's something that they want to do. And I was trying, which is why I will always ask, do you have tattoos? And are they big tattoos or are they small ones that can be covered with stickers? So they will provide you with stickers so you can take part in the waters.
Well, that's a pretty unique experience. Are there other very unique experiences in Japan that people might not know about that they might want to participate in?
If you could have a tea ceremony with a geisha, that's also amazing cultural experience to have. You could also do some of the musical performances with a geisha and have a meal and dining, sitting on the floor, in a tatami mat. So those are different types of experiences that are outside of the norm, but I think it also enriches what you do. You can also, for some people, some they like um, visual souvenirs. So you can also be dressed as a geisha and wear the kimonos and all of those things. So those are rentals available. So you can do that, have your face made up in a kabuki, etc. So those are different types of experiences that are a little bit more immersive that you can also experience when you're in Japan. Food is also another huge thing. I love doing a food tour. And I think again, going back to this ramen, the udons, and things of that nature, a lot of people don't realize there are different types of broths, there are different types of noodles, and what those significances are, and also do a sushi making class. So there are things that where you can immerse yourself that will bring a different level of texture to and authenticity to your trip as well.
How active does one have to be for Japan? In other words, is there a lot of walking and hiking? And tell me about that.
A lot of walking. So, there's transportation everywhere where you can mitigate it at some points, but be prepared to walk. I think my lowest days, because I track my steps, was about 17,000 steps on a slow day. So you're going to do a lot of walking. And that's just par for the course. Ubers can start to get a little pricier, but there's transportation everywhere. But as you keep in mind you're going to do a lot of walking, so make sure you bring comfortable shoes. Our temptation is I want to go wear heels or things of that nature. Understand you're doing a lot of walking.
Hmm. So, what are your favorite regions in Japan?
I like Tokyo for the energy. I love Kanazawa because it's a smaller prefecture and seafood is always it's a smaller fishing town, village or prefecture. Hokkaido is great for skiing. I used to ski, so I do miss that. But, they all bring different things. The Mount Fuji area is great. I've actually hiked Mount Fuji years ago. And you can be on the lake and you can do some other things and you can even go on the mountain. You don't have to climb up it. You can take the bus or tram or drive there. So it's different experiences. There are some that seem better than others. When I went to Nara, I thought it would be great to have, oh, there's deer walking all around. It's better than it sounds, but you get to see mochi pounding. So every prefecture, every city has a different type of energy that I enjoy. Um, there's some, narrow. I don't necessarily. I think it's cool to do for a day. It's not one of my favorite cities to go back to. Osaka, very different type of energy. I'm actually going to Okinawa later this year, so I'm looking forward to that. So, I think there's so many different experiences. So I would say for right now, Kanazawa and Tokyo remain my favorites. And Kyoto it's a much quieter type of experience. And I feel from a quiet culture standpoint, there's a lot going on there. So yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Is there a best and or a worst time of year to go to Japan?
So some of it depends on, I think everyone wants to go for cherry blossoms. Understand it's going to be very crowded during cherry blossoms. It's going to be pretty, but it's going to be very crowded. Um, you know, I like to go between October and January because it gets cooler. Um, September, August, right into the first week or so of October, it's very hot in Japan. And so if you're sensitive to heat, that can be a bit of a challenge because it gets really warm there. So you have to
I,
take that into mind.
is there a hiking scene for those folks who like to go climbing and hiking and mountaineering and such?
There is. So, one, you can do some of the ski regions. Uh, you know, um, Obviously, there is quite a bit of hiking. The Mount Fuji region, I've done hiking. Like I said, I've done hiking over there. Hokkaido is great for hiking. Um, if you're going to Tokyo, Mount Takeo, there's mountains that aren't too far. Yakushima is another one. They have some fantastic forests. Nagano, the northern Alps of Japan, they have over 11 different peaks. So there's quite a few, and you can do some fairly close to Tokyo if you wanted to stay and just do day hiking, or if you wanted to spend some time. I would suggest spending some time in like Hokkaido, for example, to go and do some hiking. But if you wanted to be based in Tokyo itself, there are definitely places you can go via train or bus that are fairly close.
Okay. Well, thank you for speaking with us, Velocity. This was a great conversation. Um, I want to wish everyone happy and safe travels to Japan and otherwise. And Velocity, thank you again.
No, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Great. Take care, everybody.